Hi, I'm Charlotte and this is Tired Mama Tries to Read. So I'm going to separate my reviews into non-fiction and fiction, and this will be the non-fiction reviews for May and June. I'm going to start off with Ruby Wax, which is a book that came out I think in March. I got it for my birthday, called How to Be Human, the Manual, with a neuroscientist and a monk. So if you haven't read any of her other stuff, she talks a lot about mindfulness, about mental health issues. Her biography is really good as well if you haven't read it. This one is no different to the mindfulness ones that went before. It's split into sections, so it goes through thoughts, emotions, the body, relationships, and it talks about instances where you might need to use mindfulness practice. It talks about her personal experiences. It talks about why the body does these things. So the neuroscientist chips in for those bits. And then the monk sort of comes in to say how we might overcome these unpleasant side effects of being human, basically. And the whole back of the book is also dedicated to mindfulness practices. So it's really useful, it's funny. I love the way that Ruby and the monk and the neuroscientist all interact. Yeah, I couldn't recommend it more. So that was a brilliant read. The next one is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. And this one is a bit of a chunky book, but I really flew through it, partly because of his writing style being so amazing. Subject matter is diverse, as you might expect. It covers the whole of human history, which is no mean feat. I'll read you a bit at the beginning that really sort of stuck with me and is kind of symptomatic of what the rest of the book is like, because I was constantly stopping for bits like this and then reading them out loud to whoever happened to be nearest. So, like it or not, we are members of a large and particularly noisy family called the Great Apes. Our closest living relatives include chimpanzees, gorillas and orangutans. Chimpanzees are the closest. Just 6 million years ago, a single female ape had 2 daughters. One became the ancestor of all chimpanzees, and the other is our own grandmother. Really obvious that is how it would have started, but just to hear it written like that really blew my mind, and there were lots of bits in there like that. So I definitely recommend that. I'll probably do a more detailed review when I've read Homo Juice, which is the second book that kind of follows on from this one. So yeah, that was a brilliant one. Third one is How Not to Be a Boy by Robert Webb, and there he is, and it was great. It was funny, it was emotional, it was well written, it was insightful, and it was searingly honest. His reflections upon his own actions were just, that's what blew me away the most, that he could analyse where he'd gone wrong, and not just in a kind of, oh, you know, I'm sensitive and so this happened. It was real kind of, well, I did this because I'm selfish and then I went on to do it again, and I love that. So very, very open and honest, leading right up to present day, where he's, you know, by his own admittance, not been the best of dads at the beginning. And just, it seemed like a really essential read for the male of the species. And the only sad thing about it is that I lent it to my dad and he really didn't like it, which I still don't understand. I've lent it to other people and they loved it, so I feel like that was an anomaly. But he says really nice things as well. Apart from the whole story going on, the underlying story, there's also really lovely bits, little bits of wisdom. So he says, it starts with having a family who loves you and someone who inspires you to read. Not because reading makes you smart, although it helps, but because to involve yourself in a story is to imagine what it's like to be someone else. And generally, boys aren't much encouraged to do that. Little snippets like that were really awesome. So that's that one. And the last one is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Reni Eddo-Lodge, with a super cool cover. I don't know if you can see that. She talks about the cover because she knows it's super cool. Yeah, I just think everybody should read it. If you're British, you should definitely read it. If you're white, you should definitely read it. It's just time. It's just time to face this fact that we've got this privilege that we really feel uncomfortable talking about, which is weird. And she just doesn't beat about the bush. She says we need to talk about it. If we're going to ever talk about what it feels to be from a minority, so to speak, then we need to talk about why people from the majority feel so defensive about their privilege. She says, when I talk about white privilege, I don't mean that white people have it easy, that they've never struggled or that they've never lived in poverty. But white privilege is the fact that if you're white, your race will almost certainly positively impact your life's trajectory in some way, and you probably won't even notice it. So yeah, I can definitely say that it's been a long journey that I've been on in the last few years. Really hasn't been very long, where I've really analysed the issues that she talks about. And I wish so much that I'd read this book before. I mean, it's only recently come out in paperback, so it's kind of, my journey predates it. But she's been talking about this on the internet for a long, long time, so I wish I'd known about her. I wish I'd known about so many of the writers that I now know about that talk about race, because it's really humbling to know that there's this whole other world going on, and if you're in a position of privilege, you just might not even know about it. So now I feel recharged to use my own privilege to do something better. So I've got to try and call out racism, not just obvious racism, which is much easier to call out, but the sort of underlying stuff, the I'm not racist but stuff. I need to do that better, and I need to do it more, and I need to put my money where my mouth is, really. So I need to, you know, give what I can to causes that are led by people of colour, because I've statistically got more money than they have, and it's not my place to speak for them, but maybe I can help them to do what they need to do. So, excellent read. I'd say out of the 4 non-fiction books, that is the one that if you were to read, I think you should read. So yeah, I'll do another video now on the fiction read.